I was only 16 when my parents gave me a choice. Start paying $800 a month or get out. Not for rent, not for food, but to support their favorite child, my little brother. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing I was no longer their daughter, just a burden. What happened 20 years later? Let's just say, karma has perfect timing. I've never believed that family meant safety. Not in the way most people talk about it. For a long time, the word home felt more like a punishment than a comfort. My name is Maya, I'm 36 now, and I live in Toronto with my husband, 2 kids, and my uncle, though I call him Dad now. I don't often talk about the early parts of my life, but I guess it's time I tell my story from the beginning. Maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. We lived in a small house that belonged to my grandparents. My father, Victor, was a real estate agent who thought far too highly of himself, and my mother, Diane, worked part-time at a local bookstore. She wasn't cruel, not directly, but she never stood up for me either. She just followed my father's lead. And that meant ignoring me. I had a younger brother, Ryan. He was 5 years younger than me, quiet but incredibly sharp. When he was just 6 years old, my parents had him take one of those fancy IQ tests. He scored 148. Suddenly, it was like a switch flipped in their minds. He was the golden child, their ticket to a bright future. The attention, the resources, the praise, it all flowed toward him. And me? I became invisible. I wasn't a bad kid. I got decent grades. I played volleyball and helped around the house without being asked. But that didn't matter to them. If it wasn't extraordinary, it wasn't worth noticing. The few times I tried to show them something I was proud of, like a certificate I got at school or a drawing I spent days working on, they barely glanced at it before changing the subject. Ryan got full marks again. My father would say, "You should try to learn something from him." The only people who ever made me feel seen were my grandparents and my uncle, Sam. Uncle Sam was my dad's younger brother. He had chronic asthma and didn't have a stable job. He worked from home as a freelance writer, mostly doing odd gigs online. Because of his health, he never moved out and stayed in the house with us. My grandparents took care of him. They were gentle souls, the kind of people who made everything feel safe. Especially for me. Uncle Sam and I had a quiet bond. He never said much, but he was kind. He'd leave little notes on my notebooks. "Nice work, Maya," or "Your story made me smile." And sometimes, when I had a rough day, he'd sit beside me in silence, just being there. That was enough. That was more than I got from anyone else in the house. Everything changed the year I turned 9. My grandparents were driving home from a grocery run when a drunk driver ran a red light. The crash killed them both instantly. I still remember the moment we got the call. My mother dropped the phone. My father stood there, frozen, for just a second, and then something strange happened. He smiled. I noticed it immediately. Not the kind of sad, broken smile that comes from shock. No, this was something else. A smirk. A glint in his eyes that I couldn't understand at the time. But Uncle Sam? He broke down. He sat on the couch, his shoulders shaking, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know what grief looked like until that day. And I also learned what it didn't look like. After the funeral, things got worse for Uncle Sam. Without Grandma and Grandpa there to protect him, my father started picking him apart more openly. "You've lived off us long enough," he snapped one night. "Why don't you try being useful for once?" My uncle didn't argue. He just sat there, hands folded, looking down like he believed it. It hurt to watch. I asked him once, "Why don't you say anything back?" He looked at me and said, "Because he's right. I don't have much to offer. I'm just grateful they let me stay." That answer stuck with me. Not because I believed it, but because I realized how much he believed it. Things got tense in the house. My dad became colder, my mom busier. She spent most of her time helping Ryan with his tutoring or cooking special meals just for him. One evening, Dad told Uncle Sam, "This house belongs to us now. It's time you find your own place." Uncle Sam left the next week. I held onto his hand at the front door, begging him not to go. "Please don't leave me," I whispered. He gently pulled his hand away and placed it on my shoulder. You're strong, Maya. Stronger than you think. You'll be okay. I'm worried about you, I said, my voice cracking. He smiled softly. I'll be fine. You just take care of yourself, okay? And then he was gone. Life at home felt colder than ever. The only time things felt normal was when I was outside, at school, the library, or wandering the neighborhood. At home, I was either cleaning, cooking, or being ignored. Ryan's tutoring schedule got more intense, and my mother completely gave up on housework. That all fell on me. Since your brother and I are busy, you can help around the house, she said one day, handing me a list of chores longer than my math homework. If I didn't get everything done, I was called lazy or useless. There were nights I cried myself to sleep from hunger, having skipped dinner because I didn't finish the laundry in time. And every time Ryan succeeded at something, which he often did, it felt like another nail in the coffin of my worth. Then, the summer I turned 16, everything shifted again. One night, while I was scrubbing the kitchen floor, my parents called me into the living room. My father had his arms crossed. My mother looked uneasy. We've decided something, he said bluntly. You're almost an adult. We can't keep wasting our time and money on someone who's not going anywhere. My heart sank. What do you mean? He leaned forward. You'll start paying $800 a month starting next week. Rent, bills, food. If you can't, well, it's time you learn to stand on your own. My mom handed me a small envelope of cash, barely enough for a bus pass and a meal. Maybe you can call your uncle, she said softly. Figure something out. I was stunned. No warnings. No conversation. Just a cold eviction. Later that night, I stood outside the house I'd grown up in, my backpack digging into my shoulders, my hands shaking as I walked toward the bus stop. I had no plan, but I knew where I needed to go. I needed to find Uncle Sam. It was late, maybe around 10 p.m., when I arrived at Uncle Sam's apartment. The building looked older than I remembered, peeling paint, flickering hallway lights, and the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful, just tired. I hesitated at the door, nervous, unsure if he even still lived there. But when I pressed the doorbell, I heard slow footsteps from inside. Then the door opened. Uncle Sam stood there, looking surprised. His hair had gotten thinner, and he wore an oversized hoodie and house slippers. But his face was still the same. Gentle, familiar, safe. Maya, he said, eyebrows furrowed. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I dropped my backpack to the floor and burst into tears. He didn't ask anything right away. He just reached out, pulled me into a hug, and let me cry. That hug was everything I needed in that moment. His warmth, his steady breath, his hand on my back. It reminded me I wasn't alone. I'm sorry for showing up like this, I finally said, wiping my eyes. Don't be, he replied softly. Come inside. We sat down in his tiny living room, and I told him everything. How my parents kicked me out. How they said they only needed one successful child. How they handed me pocket money like I was some stranger on the street. Uncle Sam listened quietly, his face growing darker with each word. What are they doing? He muttered under his breath, shaking his head. I didn't know where else to go. I whispered, my voice trembling. He looked straight at me. You did the right thing coming here. But I don't want to be a burden, I added quickly, ashamed. Uncle Sam sighed and leaned forward. Maya, look around. I don't have much. This place is small, I'm often sick, and my work barely pays the bills. But if you're okay with all that, I want to be your parent. I'd be proud to be. Before he even finished the sentence, I flung my arms around him. I didn't need perfect. I needed real. And he was real. Life after that wasn't easy, but for the first time in years, it felt like home. Uncle Sam's apartment was cramped and smelled faintly of old books and coffee. His fridge was usually half empty. But we laughed. We talked. We shared meals, even if they were simple. He always asked how my day was. He celebrated my small wins like they were gold medals. I worked hard. I got a part-time job at a grocery store nearby and kept going to school. My grades improved, maybe because I finally had peace. Uncle Sam helped where he could, editing my essays, making sure I got rest, even writing a note to school when I caught the flu. We never talked much about my parents. Occasionally, when I passed by a photo frame with an old family picture, I'd feel a sting. But I told myself they didn't deserve my thoughts anymore. A few years went by like that. I graduated high school, got a scholarship to a state university, and studied business. It was hard juggling classes and part-time work, but I managed. I had a dream, to build a life so stable, so happy, that Uncle Sam would never have to worry again. He was proud, so proud. At my graduation, he cried openly. "You did it," he said, squeezing my hand. "You really did it." I smiled at him, teary-eyed. We did it. After college, I landed an internship that turned into a full-time role at a tech company. The job was in Toronto, Canada. It was a big step, moving countries, starting over, but I wanted it. I wanted a clean slate. At first, Uncle Sam hesitated. "Are you sure about this? That's far." "I am," I told him. "But only if you come with me." It took some convincing, but eventually he agreed. I helped get his paperwork sorted, and 6 months later, we were in a new city, a new home, and starting a new chapter. Toronto was different. Bigger, colder in the winters, but it felt like opportunity. My company was welcoming, and I quickly adapted. A year later, I met Aaron, an IT consultant with kind eyes and a calm voice. He was thoughtful, gentle, and always made me feel heard. It didn't take long for us to fall in love. Uncle Sam approved instantly. "He listens to you," he said. "That's rare." Aaron and I got married in a small ceremony in a park near our apartment. Uncle Sam walked me down the aisle. My parents weren't invited. A few years later, Aaron and I had 2 children, a girl and a boy. Our small condo became a warm little world. Uncle Sam, now in better health thanks to proper care and a milder climate, helped raise them. He read them bedtime stories, told them gentle jokes, and spoiled them with homemade crafts and simple snacks. Life felt full. We didn't have luxury, but we had love. Then one Saturday afternoon, I heard a knock at our door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The kids were napping, Aaron was working in the study, and Uncle Sam was out on his daily walk. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. It was them. My parents, Victor and Diane. I hadn't seen them in almost 20 years. They looked older than I expected. My father's hair was mostly gone, and he leaned heavily on a cane. My mother looked tired, her eyes sunken. They both wore uneasy smiles. "Maya," my father said, like no time had passed. "Have you been well?" I didn't say anything at first. Just stared at them. "We've come a long way," my mother added, trying to soften the moment. "It's time to get along, don't you think?" I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" They looked at each other for a second, hesitating. Then my father said, "Let's put the past behind us. We're family." I raised an eyebrow. "Family? You are always emotional," he muttered, almost under his breath. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." "I think you should leave," I said coldly, starting to shut the door. But my mother stepped forward. "Please, Maya. We're in a difficult situation." Something about her voice sounded desperate. Different. Like they weren't just here for peace. Difficult how? My father's eyes darted away. "Ryan, he left. Disappeared. Left a note saying he's done with us." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "He's gone," my mother whispered. "And we've lost everything." They stood there, hoping I'd say something. Hoping I'd save them. But all I could do was stand there, wondering why, after all this time, they came back. And why now? For a moment, I just stood there, silent. My father's eyes were heavy with pride swallowed by desperation, and my mother kept wringing her hands like she was waiting for me to reach out first. But I didn't. I couldn't. After everything they'd done, they really thought they could just show up and pick up where they left off? I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door gently behind me so the kids wouldn't wake up. "So let me get this straight," I said, arms folded. "Ryan's gone. You lost everything. And now you're here for what? Money? A place to stay?" My mother looked down. My father didn't even try to deny it. "Yes," he said. "We're not asking for much. Just a little help." A roof, maybe.
Food.
Were your parents, Maya? I let out a short, bitter laugh. Parents? You remember that now. We raised you until you were 16, my mother said quickly, as if that counted for something. Raised me? I shot back. You raised Ryan. You ignored me, worked me to the bone, and kicked me out the moment I couldn't contribute. Do you even remember what you said that day? That you only needed one successful child. My father's expression soured, but I wasn't done. You handed me a few bucks like I was a stranger and told me to figure it out. And now, 20 years later, you come to my door because your golden boy walked away. You don't understand, Maya, my mother whispered. Ryan was under so much pressure. He was supposed to take care of us. That's how it was meant to be. I stared at her. And you thought that was fair to him? He had the potential, my father muttered. No, I said firmly. He had expectations forced onto him. Like I had neglect forced onto me. They didn't respond. There was a long pause. My father looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in presence. All that arrogance and control he used to carry gone. Then he tried again. We made mistakes, Maya. But we're still your family. You can't just leave us like this. My voice trembled, but I held steady. You left me first. At 16. When I needed you most. You made your choice. My mother's eyes welled up. But we're old now. We have no one. I shook my head. You did have someone. You had Ryan. But you broke him, too. He may have been the genius, the prodigy, but he was also your prisoner. Do you want to know where he is? They both looked up suddenly. He's safe, I continued. He reached out to me months ago, told me everything. The pressure, the guilt, the loneliness. He couldn't take it anymore. So he left. And I don't blame him one bit. My father's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked defeated. Does he live here? My mother asked, her voice almost hopeful. No, I replied. Not yet. But we talk. We've rebuilt something real. Without you. I turned to go back inside, but my father grabbed my arm. Not forcefully, but desperate. Maya, please. Just think about it. I pulled my arm free. You know, the man inside this house, the one you called useless and weak, is the only real father I've ever had. Uncle Sam raised me when you wouldn't. He gave me love when you gave me rejection. So no, I won't help you. Not after what you did to him, to me, to Ryan. They didn't follow me when I stepped back in. I closed the door quietly behind me. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear or sadness. It was from release. That part of my life was over. For good. Later that night, Uncle Sam came back from his walk. He noticed the tension right away. Something happened? He asked, setting his keys on the counter. I nodded slowly. They came. His eyes narrowed. Victor and Diane? I nodded again. They've lost everything. Ryan's gone. The house is gone. And now they want me to take care of them. Uncle Sam sat down, looking tired, but not surprised. What did you say? I told them no, I said. I told them everything. He looked at me with those kind, warm eyes. You've grown strong, Maya. You didn't let bitterness turn you into them. They don't deserve kindness, I whispered. No, he agreed. But you do. A few weeks later, Ryan arrived in Toronto. We met in a quiet coffee shop near my office. I almost didn't recognize him. Tired eyes, messy hair, clothes that didn't quite fit. But when he saw me, he smiled, a little unsure, a little sad. Maya, he said. I hugged him right there in the middle of the shop. He held on tightly. Over coffee, he told me everything. The pressure to succeed. The endless tutoring. The cold praise. The suffocating expectations. They didn't love me, he said. They invested in me. And when I tried to breathe, they called it betrayal. I reached for his hand. You're not alone anymore. He looked at me, eyes glistening. Thank you for being there. Even when I wasn't. When we got home, Uncle Sam opened the door. Ryan froze. Uncle. Uncle Sam smiled. You look like you've had a long journey. Ryan stepped forward and, without a word, hugged him. Tight. like the child he never got to be. That night, for the first time in years, our home felt even fuller. My family, my real family, was finally together. Ryan moved in with us a week after he arrived. It was a bit tight. Our home wasn't huge, but none of us minded. We made space. The kids adored him instantly. He was awkward at first, unsure how to talk to them or play like a regular uncle, but that changed quickly. I'd catch him building pillow forts in the living room or drawing silly comics with them at the kitchen table. Slowly, the years of tension began to fade from his shoulders. One evening, as we all sat down for dinner, Uncle Sam looked around the table and chuckled softly. "Never thought I'd see this day," he said, "the three of us in one place laughing." I smiled at him. "You made it happen." "No," he replied gently. "You did. You both did." Those days were simple but full. Ryan took a job at a local art studio, assisting with design work and helping run weekend classes. He told me it wasn't about the money. He just wanted to do something that didn't feel like a performance. Something that was his. I understood that more than he realized. Uncle Sam started attending a weekly writing group at the library. He said it was just for fun, but I knew better. He was finally doing something for himself, after years of putting everyone else first. His health had improved so much since moving here. Better food, clean air, and maybe, most of all, peace of mind. The kids called him Grandpa Sam, and he wore the title like a badge of honor. Sometimes, I'd sit out on the balcony at night, watching the lights of the city, and wonder how different my life would have been if Uncle Sam hadn't opened that door all those years ago. I might have been broken, lost in a world that never gave me a fair chance. But I wasn't, because one person chose to love me when everyone else gave up. And then, one day, I got a letter. It was from a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. The news was blunt. My parents had lost everything again. They were staying in a rundown shelter near Denver, barely getting by. Apparently, they'd asked around the family for help, but no one responded. They had burned every bridge. I held the letter in my hands for a long time, staring at the words. I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just quiet, as if some part of me had already buried that chapter long ago. I showed it to Ryan later that night. He read it slowly, then looked at me. "What do we do?" "Nothing," I said. He nodded, understanding. "Do you think they ever really loved us?" I thought for a moment. No. Not in the way that mattered. They loved what we could do for them. They loved the idea of us. But not us. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "I'm okay with that." "Me too," I whispered. Later, we told Uncle Sam about the letter. He didn't say much, just nodded, then looked out the window. After a moment, he turned to us and said, "Sometimes people don't change. But that doesn't mean you have to carry their weight forever." I reached for his hand. "You've carried enough for all of us." He smiled, a little misty-eyed. "And I'd do it all over again." Now, years later, I look at my life with gratitude. My husband, Aaron, still supports me in every way. Our children are growing up in a home filled with kindness, not perfection. Ryan is flourishing, finally free to be himself. Uncle Sam, our anchor, our quiet hero, still sits at the breakfast table every morning with a pen and notebook in hand. Not long ago, my daughter asked me, "Mom, who's the most important person in your life?" I thought of a sickly man who opened his door to a scared teenager, who became the father I never had, and who loved me without ever asking for anything in return. I smiled and said, "Your Grandpa, Sam." She nodded and hugged him later that day, like she understood. And when I thanked him once again, just like I always do, he pulled me close and said the same words he's always said. "I'm proud of you, my daughter." And I believe him. Every single time.